Good evening to everybody. This evening we will make a open mic. We have also actually we are starting with it's not 42 from Kabardino-Balkaria. I have also with Russian Federation Sadullah Farenzai that is connected now. That is my friend from Afghanistan, actually in Norway. So the open mic it's with the link on the community, and we also put the link in StreamYard in the chat. If you want to connect, you can. This evening we will make one stream of let's say about maximum 1 hour, because yesterday we did a stream of 3 hours. It's not 42, say not 3 hours. It was 2 hours 50 minutes. So
it was 2 hours 30 minutes.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah. Okay.
I want my money back.
Okay. So, and Asadullah, can you hear us? Because you have your mic and
Yes,
camera
I'm
off.
hearing you, my friend.
Okay, hello. Perfect. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Hope you are doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing well. So, okay, for who didn't see his speech, Asadullah is a friend that is working for UN, sure now, it's United Nations. No, at the moment, United Nations mission in Afghanistan. Before was working for the Norwegian embassy. Right? I'm right. Okay, perfect. So we already did a speech with him, and I will put like the link on the speech in the chat if you want to see him. It was very interesting about the actuality in Afghanistan. For tonight, I wanted like to talk a little bit about what is happening in the last days. I have some interesting data also from Italy, because I have like free hands, first hand, sorry. And maybe we will talk also what is happening in the next election, because it will be very important election, American midterm, Brazilian election, and this week it will be also the Congress of the Communist Party in China to reconfirm or not Xi Jinping. It's like a sort of formality, but it will be. So I think that all these scheduled events could change a little bit the situation also in the war in Ukraine. The economical data that we got actually, like in Italy, it's that technically we will have a technical recession in Italy in the next trimester of the next year. It was expected, but the actual forecast, it's like that the recession, it's forecasted to be ended in April economically now, but it depends. But everything that will happen in the next months. About the gas storage, I can give you the data from Italy. Actually, it's 100% of mainly 100% of the gas storage full in Italy. So there is no problem for the gas consumption in Southern Europe. As I said yesterday, the main problem in Europe is like Germany. We are actually receiving gas also from Russia via not Nord Stream, but with the Yamal Brotherhood, the Brotherhood pipe that passed through Ukraine, Slovakia, Austria, and then Italy, and a lot of pipes from Mediterranean Sea. What I can say, I had some chat with friends both in Russia and in Ukraine. Situation is very tense, and the retaliation that we had in the last 2 days about let's say missile attacks full scale in Ukraine, it's very interesting by my point of view, but I will tell you my sensation later. And it's not 42. Asadullah, if you want to talk a little bit and say something, and then I will give you other information.
I want to propose a question.
Go.
If I may. Is it how realistic it is to think that OPEC has become a party to this conflict at this point, or is it just? Am I just grasping at straws? Like, think about it. The stated goal of OPEC, right? It's on the website. Let me find the quote. Secure, fair, and stable prices for petroleum producers, an efficient, economic, and regular supply of petroleum to consuming nations, and fair return on capital to those investing in the industry. This thought, the idea of price caps on oil, or perhaps on energy, proposed by the G7, it sounds to me like it goes completely contrary even to their stated goals and objectives. So I wonder, and on top of that, there was this idea floating. Frankly, I don't understand anything about economy. I'll give that disclaimer up front. But I thought the idea was that as OPEC is able to control the oil prices through supply, International Monetary Fund is able to control the oil prices through increasing the what's it called? God damn it, the term just escaped me. The rates of what's it? God damn it! It just flew away. I was on track and it just flew away. What do they increase? What? God damn it! That's embarrassing.
No. But I got your question. But let's make a.
They increase this thing that I cannot remember the name of, and
the production of oil.
No, not the production of oil. When you give a loan, and the percentage that you get off
interest
of the loan. Thank you. God, interest rate, and the International Monetary Fund can increase the interest rates, therefore reducing another term I forgot. God damn it. Recession, reducing the economy.
But
and therefore reducing the demand for oil and controlling the prices that way.
It's already happening. It's not for if you check.
It's like 1 second. Let me please finish. Yeah. It's difficult for me. I don't know anything about any of this. So if OPEC wants to control oil prices unilaterally, and International Monetary Fund tries to prevent them from doing that and tries to control it from its own side, isn't that a conflict between them that perhaps could issue a response from OPEC? And since OPEC and OPEC Plus are, in cahoots, let's be honest, with Russia, perhaps those actions and counteractions make them a party to this conflict at this point.
Okay.
Basically, that's the proposition. Sorry if it was messy.
No, it was not messy. Okay, just for you to understand the actual effect of the oil cut production of OPEC Plus, it's already technically finished because the oil prices are going down, not up. This is not because technically the OPEC Plus had some effect on the prices. So at the moment, the price cap is useless. Why? Because we all know that in the for sure the first trimester or semester or the next year will be a recession, so less demand of goods. So when you have less demand of goods, like the prices of oil and gas going down. At the moment, oil is already going down. Brent and VTI, for example, I was checking today. The VTI it's -3%, about $88 for barrel, and the Brent today made also -2.7%. 93 for barrel. So if you look to the graph, I can share it to you. Let me try. Okay. Okay. If you look, do you see the graph?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me see. This is the VTI. Okay, it's going down. This is the Brent. It's going down. You see that the effect. If we check, for example, the last 6 months. Okay, either for let's say. Technically, I want to check more, but let's see. You see that the prices were going up in the last month, and in the last days are going down. Why? Because here idem, it's the same. Why? Because the market it's already discounting the effect of the probably recession in the prices of the goods. So the same you can check in the Standard & Poor's or Nasdaq or any other stock exchange, except Moscow Stock Exchange because it's fixed to the Russian market. You cannot buy in Moscow Stock Exchange if you're a foreigner now. All the prices were already with a -15% from the beginning of the war. So there is two theories. One theory is that the recession was started in February 2020 during the beginning of the pandemic of COVID, and it was covered by public money. So all the money that the government spent in the economy to reduce the effect of the lockdowns and the pandemic. And if it's like this, in this theory, we are already 2 years, mainly 2 years and a half in a recession. So, or we are in the ending of a recession, or the second theory, it's like that the recession is starting now. In the second scenario, it will be very interesting, the effect of the energy market, let's say, changement, because Europe was the biggest buyer for Russia, and all the prices are depending by the demand. So also the gas prices now in Italy, it's dropping down. Because we are not selling, we are selling to the TTP prices, the Netherlands Stock Exchange, but we are buying on spot. So actually, Italy, it's an example, we are selling the gas abroad because we have more than we need. And so the OPEC Plus about a party, it's a good question. But I think that OPEC Plus, it's a very complicated group because Saudi Arabia, it's technically US allied, and it's one of the first buyer of US weapons. So on propaganda and also you have a very diversified type of alliance inside. why they tried to reduce the amount of the oil production. It's like to increase the cost of the oil, because if they didn't reduce it, it could drop more than 88, maybe 70. And with cost of extraction, I think that the cost of extraction in Russia for oil, it's probably $10 for barrel or less. So the main problem is for the oil that you extract in US by fracking. I don't know if you know what is it. It's like micro explosion in
Pumping
carbon.
water underground.
Yeah. So it's diseconomic if the prices are less than $40 for barrel. So if you can check, there was like a sort of alliance between Saudi and Russians in the last years, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, where they tried to reduce as much as possible the cost of the oil for barrel to force the US to don't produce oil by fracking, because it was diseconomic.
So that's what it was.
Yes.
I thought they were just, dick measuring who could have cheaper oil with Russia.
It was because they wanted to cut the market of the US export, because technically the US doesn't need, they don't care about the price of the oil from Saudi Arabia, because the United States are completely self-sustainable. They don't need to import anything. So the only thing it's about the export market. Also another big producer from not original, let's say, oil extraction, it's Canada. From Alberta, they have oil that is extracted from bituminous sands. It's like a special type of sand that it's only in Alberta, where you can extract oil. But it's more expensive than from oil extraction, because from oil extraction you dig and it's coming up. You need to control
There's one thing I heard about from Scott Ritter, brings this up a lot of times, actually, quite a lot. That about 3% of Russian, not Russian, American oil consumption is geared towards refineries that are specifically tuned to work with mazout or similar oil that can only be purchased from either from Venezuela or from Russia. And I guess United States are still buying Russian oil because of those refineries, because it would be expensive to what's the word, to change them to their domestic mark of oil or something like that. So I don't know.
I checked, because I didn't know about mazout. And the mazout, it's low qualified heavy fuel oil used in power plants or similar application, and
it's for
it's almost exclusively
fuel.
almost exclusive manufacture in Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan. I didn't know about it, but I think that let's say also about price cap and about anything that it's like closing the Russian market to oil, it's impossible, because there is a lot of black market about oil. So you forced to don't, for sure, Russian Federation is making a lot less profit, because they have to move into intermediaries. Like, I don't know, I sell to India sell to Italy, example. Okay. So, but the problem is it's that you need many, let's say, steps to do it, and not directly. And the gas is more complicated because you cannot do it. It's not profitable. LNG, it's at the moment used very few from Russian Federation, and the main reason is because they don't have a lot of ports of airborne that are not frozen during the winter. You cannot use, for example, the North airports in Russian Federation because they're frozen. The only one that you can use is Vladivostok and nothing
It's
else.
the polar ice cap fluctuation over the years. If you remember, I sent you a video about it, where its northern sea route is clearing up more and more and becoming more accessible for navigation the year round.
Okay, but take a look at how much time could take
it's gonna
to
take a
make.
while.
Let's take what I want to do from Murmansk to Vladivostok. It's a little bit easier to pass through Suez Channel to make like from Italy to India. So it's a matter of time and the cost of the trip. So longer is the trip and longer is the cost for the goods. So you need to sell it more expensive. This is why it's, in my point of view, if one sort of a peace could be made soon or late, I think that with this Russian government or the next one or whatever, maybe with time it will restart for sure a connection between the Europe infrastructure and the Russian export.
For sure.
But maybe like it will take time, but longer is the war and longer will be a problem also for the Russian Federation export, because let's take a cost of the war. Wars are very expensive. Yesterday it was calculated by some ocean channel that the attacks costed to the Russian Federation between 600 and 700 millions of dollars 1 day of missiles attacks. 1 day. So imagine if this money could be spent more, like to fix your streets, or in Nalchik, or in another city, Ufa or Chelyabinsk.
The street recently.
No, okay,
but I understand. I agree with you.
Hospitals, education, whatever you want.
There's a lot of stuff you could do with that.
So, and the problem is the sensation that I have, it's like that this friction war, it's in a strategical way useful for the US to decrease as much as possible the chance of the Russian Federation to regain a chance to make a type of defense or attack war like this one in the next years. If I have to spend too many military, the problem is that the Russian economy is not big to fill all the military expenses that needs. You got it.
My personal worry in that regard, honestly, is that what the path of North Korea in that regard, because this conflict is of existential nature for Russia. So if it continues, military will be the last expense that will be withheld. It's an appropriate
okay
word. Everything else will be cut.
I got it. Imagine like this one. I studied about the collapse of Soviet Union 2 times. One in 2012, I was in Norway, and another one I was studying in Moscow in 2016. At the edge of the 80s, the Soviet Union GDP was 1/3 of the United States in the 80s, but the military expenditure was the same. So you can it's something unsustainable. This is why the level of everything was let's say sufficient for the standard of living of the Soviet people, but was not the same level. Because if I have 1/3 of your money and I spend the same for military, one example is the project Buran. A lot of people in the West don't know it. It was like the Russian shuttle, but the cost. Check if you want it. The cost of the Buran program that made one only flight in the history of the program was one of the drops that make the water going out of the vase of the Soviet Union because it was unsustainable. So,
Sorry to
Asadullah,
interrupt. Yeah, sorry to
okay.
interrupt. I was just very and like very carefully and closely hearing the discussions. A question.
We are
Just
here.
you just mentioned about the U.S. that the United States, doesn't care about the oil and gas, or regarding when it comes to Saudi Arabia, for example, or Saudis. So, what was the purpose of Biden's visit then to KSA, Saudi?
So
I think
my,
what I feel that Biden is in a very hard position, and because elections are coming also, and he's not in a good position now.
now, what I wanted to say, it was different. It's not that they don't care about the Saudi oil. I said that the US are not importing oil from abroad. It's two different things. It's for sure the oil prices depend also by the offer of all the producers. Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, or whatever. If there is like more production, like I think that the idea of Biden was to ask to the Saudis to increase the production of oil to reduce the internal cost of the oil market also in the US. So not because they are directly importing oil from Saudis, but for sure Saudi Arabia have their own interest. They have their own war. Nobody's talking about it, but Saudi Arabia is having a long fighting war in Yemen.
Yeah.
And nobody cares because it's far away, but it's people is dying also and blah blah blah. And so but technically Saudis are let's say allied of the US geopolitically, and probably Biden was expecting some help from them. At the moment, if you check the real cut of the oil production, that was about 2 million barrels for day. Actually, 1 million barrel was already cut because there is no demand, not because we are not producing. So
I wonder. Sorry, please continue.
No, I finished.
I wonder if another important, or more important even, topic that Biden might have had to visit to Saudi Arabia for was the coming perspective of Saudi Arabia selling oil in other currencies, other than dollar. So maybe that was one of the topics and the reasons why he visited Saudi Arabia. Because a little bit afterwards, or even prior, I actually don't remember, Xi Jinping visited Saudi Arabia as well. And I don't know, are they selling? Are the Saudis selling oil in yuan right now, or not? I actually
I
don't
don't
know.
think so. I think that there was like some, but the only state that tried to make one selling not in dollar, as I remember from the OPEC, was Libya with
Yeah.
Gaddafi, but it ended very bad. So I don't think that it ended bad for this. This is conspiracy theory, blah blah blah.
How
Mm,
conspiratorial
but
is that?
but imagine that Libya was let's say one of the big allied economically of Italy. So the real reason, if you check about the war, it was not everybody is talking that it was a NATO war, but if you check, it was started from France. Not and France asked the intervention of US, and after like to use the Sicily based of Italy, and Italy was against. At the moment, the president was Berlusconi, but at the end they have to concede the basis. I think that. Uh, you remember that I asked your question yesterday about the petrodollar in the round table. Uh, all the others answer the same. It's like probably the
Gonna
dollar.
remain.
Huh?
It's gonna remain. They all said it's gonna
and
remain.
and it was like from all over the world. No, it was not only from US. So it's you need to have a big economy and military to have let's say the power to impose your currency. At the moment, I think that the second more used currency for foreign let's say for your personal reserve in foreign exchange, it's euro, not yuan.
Mhm.
So you have dollar, euro, and other reserves, but at the moment, I think that Europe is losing more money about the currency than for the rest. If you check now, the exchange with the dollar, it's at least 1 to 1. It was 1 to 2, 1 to 1.2, 1.1.4.
I don't remember it ever during my life being that euro or British pound were 1 to 1 with the dollar.
It was
Not
like
even.
years ago, like 10 years ago, it was at least 1 to 1. But for also yen, if you check the yen, the value is very low now. So it's good for people that want to buy stuff in your place. In another hand, it's good for export. Now, if the situation will be rebalanced about energy security for European Union, it will be easier to export to US because our goods will be cheaper.
Mm. But
The
one thing is
problem,
that, Mhm.
the problem is the production because now one thing that you have to know, the electrical companies for the industries they're making monthly contracts, not bills, because they don't know the price of the next month.
Mm.
So it's a disaster because you cannot plan the production. This is the problem. It's not about a currency war, blah blah blah. That it's when you are not sure of what you will have to produce in quantity for the next year. You don't know for the next month. So Asadullah, what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I mean, like I was thinking about this bigger picture. Like, if you see it, I think neither parties are benefiting from this war. If it is Russia, if it is Ukraine, and particularly, I think it seems that Europeans have been pushed to this war by one big power, and they didn't calculate, you know, the they didn't have any backup plans for the energy crisis, particularly Germany. Like they have facing a lot of crisis. the companies, are shutting down. But generally, what I'm hearing from various sources, um, that the Russians have been inflicted more casualties, and they actually underestimated the Ukrainians. But casualties are actually from both sides. I mean, it's also from Russians and also from the Ukrainians. But the more this war become longer, I think the more damage it will generate. Uh, Maybe ultimately it will. I hope not, but when you provoke someone to the most extent, then it could trigger a nuclear war. When we have all seen this Putin press conference, I think when he was saying that it's not a bluff, that if anybody attacks these four regions, which is recently become part of the Russian after this referendum, so we are considering the importance of our territorial integrity. We don't compromise on national security, and then we will retaliate. And and he warned about the use of nuclear weapons, and he said it's not a bluff. But I mean, to me, it is, for the time being, it looks like it was a bluff, because he has more options before using the nuclear weapons. I think attacking satellites or maybe other things, but I think there has to be as a um, as a human being, I would say. For example, I believe that there has to be a solution to this. I think the prolonging of this war will only benefit certain countries, but for sure not Europe, and for sure not Ukrainians and also the Russians.
It's not going to benefit United States either in the long
There
term.
is a conspiracy theory that the US is actually pushing Europe,
It's
to
not
this war.
necessarily a conspiracy
Yeah.
theory.
But my question was, because I asked this question, that why? What's the benefit of the US in this? And they said that because they want Europeans to be dependent on the US. They want Europeans, to listen to the US, and to fight the war of US in future. For example, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. Like Norway has nothing to do with the war in Afghanistan. Like the whole Europe. I mean, it was the Twin Tower was attacked by the AQ, who have been provided sanctuaries in Afghanistan. But those AQ members or the Al Qaeda members, they did not threaten the national security of Europe, but it was, and then Iraq. So even Iraq was not a threat. It was, later on, it was discovered that there was no sort of nuclear weapons, no any chemical, but they attacked on Iraq. And these European countries have been pushed there, and they have spent treasure, like in Afghanistan, they spent trillion. And then and then after spending trillion, they have done an irresponsible withdrawal. They have left us, the whole Afghans, to the mercy of Taliban. They have made a deal with the Taliban then. So what for? I mean, like, sons and daughters of the Europeans have been killed in 20 years in Afghanistan. You spend trillion, and then you again leave the same country, where you work hardly with the Afghans for democracy, for democratic values, stability, and then you leave it again, based on a deal. So sometimes people, like, I don't understand what's going on, but there might be some sort of underneath motives that we don't understand. If one has to dig it deeper, maybe that he or she can. But I mean, like my
pers-
main point
sorry.
was that no one is benefiting from this war. I mean, particularly in the Europe and the two parties of the conflict.
My personal hypothesis, I mentioned it the last time. It's, let's say if United States wanted to transition to a different, I don't want to say battlefield, but a different region, and it's other than Europe, and a different confrontation other than between the West and, say, Russia, or what it used to be Soviet Union, and to do that safely, they wanted to prevent, as they are leaving, a new power emerging in Europe that could, as they are leaving, in 10, 20 years, challenge the United States in the same way as China is challenging the United States right now. Ukraine, and it's, you might say it's a conspiracy theory, or perhaps it is. It's a hypothesis. And Ukraine, if they wanted to prevent an alliance between Europe or even just Germany and Russia from ever happening any time soon, using Ukraine would be a way to hammer a stake between Russia and Europe that would remain as a wound for a long time, while the United States are leaving Europe and transitioning, pivoting to Asia, as the expression goes, and developing there.
We have another guest that is
Hello.
Anirban Roy that entered. So later, if you want to make your question, just be free. You make it in the chat, but you can make it live. Now, if I can answer to you both, you have to remember that we are still in, let's say, in a level of post World War II situation where the Axis forces lost. So Italy, Germany, and Japan lost the Second World War. So technically, we have to think that, for example, you have the Air Force NATO base in Europe. It's in Germany. It's not the case. The naval forces are in Italy, Naples of NATO. We have a lot of presences of US forces still in Europe. The main thing is that we need to understand why there is not an European Union armed forces, and we have 27 armies. If you check in the United States, the only two things that are in common in the 50 states are the federal law, the currency, and army, foreign policy. For all the rest, all the 50 states are completely different in the US. Different laws, different people, whatever. In Europe, you don't have neither one or the others, because Europe, it's not all in the Eurozone. You have a lot of countries without euro. And you don't have an army, you don't have a common foreign policy. When you listen to Joseph Borrell, nobody cares in Europe, in the European states, of what says Joseph Borrell. You take care about what Macron said, Scholz said, Draghi said, or whatever, the prime minister or the presidents. This is why it's complicated to manage the European foreign policy, because you have 27 European foreign policies. About the to be what Asadullah said, you have to remember that the war in Afghanistan and also in Iraq was made not by all the forces in Europe. For example, France was not participating, and it's NATO. So it was like a volunteer participation inside the two wars, where the US asked to the countries at that time, George W. Bush, to enter in this war. We now knew that probably like the real reason of this war was not something, let's say, to bring democracies or whatever, but maybe more economical or geopolitical or whatever, and maybe to have some more influence in Central Asia, to disrupt the regional power of Iran, maybe a lot of other reasons. In my opinion, who is gaining in the short time advantage? It's for sure US, because it will have some advantage in selling LNG and to Europe, and cutting us off from Russian oil, that it's more cheap, that it's cheaper. And for sure we have another player that it's gaining an interesting point of view, and something that it's gaining in China. Why China? Because China, and in a part India, because they are importing commodities and goods from Russia with a big discount. They are buying $35-40 less of the market, because if China and India is not buying from Russia, nobody's buying. So in short term, I think that these are the players that are getting benefit. The player number one that is getting benefit for me is Turkey. Turkey has a central position in the possible deals. They have one foot into shoes. They are not saying no to Russia, but they are selling Bayraktar to Ukraine. We're not selling Bayraktar to Russia. So Russian Federation is buying UAV from Iran, but with lower quality. But I hope that the conflict will end as soon as possible, because there is a lot of pain for a lot of regular people. I was in a call this morning with a friend that is a journalist in Kiev, and also the psychological state of people that are under bombing for so many months. But I don't remember. Asadullah, you were in Afghanistan during the war, or in Norway?
Which war?
The first one, like after 9/11.
I was in Afghanistan.
Okay, so like and you were based in Kabul or other city?
No, at that time I was based in Jalabad, the Tora Bora, quite near to the Tora Bora. You know, have you heard that now? You're Ustaman. Yeah.
So
because
my
village was 30 kilometers far away from the Tora Bora.
So worst place, worst time you were, man. So
yeah.
Perfect.
There was a lot of...
it's. Now, what was like your state, psychological state in 2000? In 2001, you were 20 around.
Yeah.
So like the state of I think that you remember, like, probably the psychological state of staying under like a wartime, and I think it's like terrible, like, to live in
there
time
was a
like
huge
this.
fear of this B-52 bombing, you know, and many civilians were killed actually. Even the bombardment, I remember, which caused huge civilian casualties that included men, women, elderly, children. So I remember that. So there was it was so terrible days.
But Asadullah, I will say you another thing about Afghanistan. But Anirban Roy, do you want to make your question? Because if you can activate your mic, welcome.
Am I audible?
So, see, you are live and we can hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, there was some problem in my internet. I didn't catch your last comment, Stefano.
No, but Asadul, I said only that I was asking to Aniri, but Roy, the other guest, like to make his question.
Yeah.
But the question, it was this one.
I'm from India, and I'd like to know if somehow Russia comes short of this operation or short of their talks, what will be the position of Europe in that case? Because in that case, Russia would be seen as a smaller or a weaker power than USA, and its reputation as a world not leader but as a superpower if they come out short of this operation.
If I got your question, it's like if Putin will not achieve his goals, what will be like it's this one the
What will
question.
be the reputation and what will be the Russian status in the world stage?
Okay, let
I
me.
didn't understand the question. Sorry.
The question is like if
The-
Putin will not achieve his goals, okay, or task, what will be like the perception of a European of Russia as a weak power, as a weak state? It's right. The question.
By that point, I
Not
don't think there
because
will be
No,
much
wait,
of
wait,
Russia left.
superpower.
wait. It's not Aneri, but if you can finish. Anirban Roy, if you can finish your question, just to be only to understand what you are asking.
Not just Europe, but for the world. Because in India and in Asia, we see Russia as a superpower or someone who has influence around this region. If they come short of this operation or if they don't achieve their goals, what will be the world view on them?
Okay.
The
It's not if you
same
want to answer.
as right now, I think, except worse. I don't know. I don't think there will be much of Russia left if Russia loses this conflict outright. So I always thought about sort of succession of goals for the United States in relation to dissolution and balkanization of Russia, that some kind of major destabilization has to happen in the Caucasus. And when something significant like that happens in the Caucasus, basically Russia lives and dies in the Caucasus. Perhaps I'm overestimating and presuming too much about this region I'm in, but if let's say imagine a situation where Ukraine is completely assimilated into NATO, and all NATO goals are on the territory of Ukraine are achieved. What's the next step NATO could take eastward after that? Basically, the only possible target that I see is the Caucasus and the many divided republics here, with a majority Muslim population that have very distinct ethnic identities of their own. If, for example, and there's question of Russia not still to this day not admitting to the genocide of the Circassians in the Caucasus. I don't know if that's such a crucial issue to admit necessarily, but it is what it is. It happened. It's a historical process. It's horrible. 2 million people estimated died in the result of it. But so the point is, there's grievances here, and there is
The same in
certain-
Armenia.
yeah, and there's certain elements existing, I'm sure, that and here in the republics and abroad from the what's the called from the immigrants from the children of the immigrants who had to leave the region. There sure is a sentiment for restoration of the some kind of ethnic region. So let's say if you had to, if the United States, if NATO achieved everything they wanted on Ukrainian territory, you could use Ukraine because of its proximity to the Caucasus, because of the fact that Ukraine essentially, and Crimea essentially, controls the Black Sea. You could, if you wanted to build logistics for supporting rebels, separatists in the Caucasus, you could do that through Ukraine. And if you wanted to destroy Russia completely further down the line, this is how you would do it, I think. It's horrible.
Okay. No,
in my eyes.
It's okay,
that's
but
kind of scenario that I see, at least.
But
Maybe
at this moment, I wanted to show you something that it's like one presentation that I prepared in another speech, but only to show this myth of no 1 inch eastward. You can see in this presentation. It's about the John Baker statement that was made in 1990 after the reunification of Germany. If you talk to anybody in geopolitics, if there is any chance that NATO could attack Russia, there is no reason. First, NATO it's not interested in any type of instability of the Russian Federation. If you check all the information about, for example, what happened, the reason of let me show another one. The reason of the Budapest memorandum, that was the security memorandum where Kazakhstan and Ukraine gives back the nukes to the Russia. It was because for US was more safe that all the nukes was controlled only by the Russian Federation instead of the three former republics. So if you think that US wanted to destabilize Russian Federation, in their point of view, was better to maintain the nukes in Kazakhstan and in Ukraine. If it was Ukraine with nukes, do you think that Russia was able to attack Ukraine? I don't think so.
No, but that would also be a more stable Ukraine that can defend itself militarily. So
no, but this is
with
why
nukes tend to be more stable on average than nations without nukes, less manipulative.
Like North Korea.
Well, North Korea is alive because it has nukes. North Korea still exists thanks to nukes.
No,
So
I think that
know.
North Korea still
gone.
exists because of China, not of nukes.
Well,
because without China, North Korea disappeared in one day because they have no economy. It's completely subsidized by China. But the main thing that I wanted to say, trust me, that I had a little bit of military background, not so much, but a little bit. I was military also in Italy, but there is no doctrine of attack east. For what reason? We were a huge, the three biggest friends of Russian Federation in terms of trades were Italy, Germany, and France. Why we have to think to attack Russian Federation? It's nonsense. In the Second World War, before the Second World War, you have to check that there was one short period before Hitler became completely crazy, where they made a sort of, let's say, agreement that was before the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where Germany and Russia could, and Soviet Union at that time, could be united in an alliance. Then Hitler changed idea because he saw that it was able in his mind to conquer Russia and divided the Asian continent occupied by Soviet Union between Germany and Japan.
And why would he want to conquer Russia though?
For the resources.
Yes.
Because
would NATO move eastward? Why would NATO try to? Why would the United States try
we don't
to
need now? It's
destabilize Russia and perhaps
it's a globalized world. It's easier to make trade than to make war. Why make war? It's very expensive. We said before. Only the day of yesterday, Russia.
Conventional war, but if you could create a similar situation like it was in the 90s in Russia, where basically it was a puppet government controlled by the United States, that where United States, I actually I haven't seen the exact quote from it, like they were bragging about buying 1996 elections for Yeltsin.
I don't
perhaps
know.
not conventional war, but creating a situation where you could control Russia's resources with impunity and destabilize it completely.
I don't know. It's like if you check historically, like for example, George Bush father was strictly friend as with Gorbachev, and they like each other. And for US was much better to deal with Soviet Union than with former Soviet republics. So during like the collapse of Soviet Union, the activity of Baker, of Secretary of State, was like to try to make as more stable all the former Soviet republics as possible. It's what is the good thing to have an unstable Russian Federation? A multiple conflict in Asia, destabilization of the prices. I don't know.
But if you put up a government in Russia, there's a chance of the next Putin coming up. I don't think.
Can you repeat? Because we don't listen. If you can repeat.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit interrupting.
Oh, hello. How you doing?
Hello, Manny.
If they installed a puppet government, they also have to face the chance there's a next Putin coming up. Because during Putin came up and Putin took everything away from the US. All the resources were in the hands of the US companies. And he took everything away.
Okay.
I think you got to understand that United States have one of the largest resources in the world. They could just use their own resources, And that's
it's the biggest community in the you have everything there. It's the basket of
Anirbai, what I wanted to say to you is like um, it's not right that the US was owning, because first the US was not owning any companies in Russian Federation in the 90s. If you can say that there was a lot of oligarchs during the 90s and economical anarchy, I can agree. But
No,
the control of all the Russian companies by US, it's a little bit.
they were related to US. No, the government didn't control it. It was under the
Okay.
influence.
Mhm.
Under the influence, everything it's under influence. You can say that now there is a lot of companies in Europe are under influence of China, because
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is a lot of
Yeah,
interest of
that's very
China.
true.
So
in case
but there was not an US government control of the Russian economy. What happened in the 90s was that there was a deregulation of the public market, with a lot of oligarchs that bought for nothing public companies, but all these oligarchs were Russian, not Americans. So what Putin did when he came in power, it was like to take Khodorkovsky, put him in prison, and with an accusation of fiscal fraud, and use him as an example. So you can check the history, like to show if the oligarchs want to live in Russia now, they have to stay under my rules. So
yeah, yeah.
this is why.
Yeah,
So it's not a form of a free market. It's like a market that is technically private, but with a strong control of a state. It's centralized.
yeah.
So it's
Almost every gas company in Russia is controlled by the state. Is mostly
yeah,
controlled by the government.
yeah. But
You could
you
say
have
that sometimes like
say
every
the
country has their own influence in any kind of gas company because that's what they use. Energy is literally the key to everything.
Yeah, it's the same, but let's say that in US you have the Seven Sisters, like Exxon Mobil, Chevron, whatever. Like in Italy, there is the same, that it's like Eni, that it's a big company owned by the state. In US, in Russian Federation, you have Gazprom for gas and Rosneft for oil. But the main difference in the 90s was that these companies were private, not like owned by US. The main difference, it's like for the Russian people who lived in the 90s, was like a complete anarchy economy. So the people who have more, let's say, way how to move inside it made a lot of billions very fastly. All these oligarchs came from nothing, because all the people were at the same level before 1991. So, money, if you want to talk, be
Okay.
free.
Oh yeah, yeah. And one thing actually, you know how Saudi Arabia basically are cutting down production and all that. I'm trying. I'm kind of following the Iranian protests and all that. And this all happened all of a sudden because Iran was giving their weapons to Russia, and then the protests suddenly started like right after they gave the weapons to Russia, and I don't know whether the United States wants to. Honestly, it's been pretty obvious that Russia, not I mean America wants a regime change in Iran, but I see that it's kind of dull because the army and the government are basically almost one. Because if the army doesn't like support the protesting and all that, they're probably obviously not. Because I'm seeing that a lot of Western news outlets want the Iranian government to be changed and all that, but I kind of see that as kind of unlikely because the military is in control and all that most of the time. And the main reason why they want a regime change is because they want the oil and gas from Iran and to reset ties. Because the most of the reason, mainly the reason why they're protesting is because most of the time because of economic restraints and United States sanctioned, because it's pretty obvious the United States basically sanctioned Iran for I guess their government and all of that. But and that's one of the reasons why Iran is trying to be in the alliance called BRICS. They're trying to get economic relief and also trying to have equal distance with BRICS and and what's it called again? In America too, because they want America to de-sanction them a little bit, have at least give the sanctions, like lay back the sanctions a little bit. But I see that's not possible because of the protest, and they've been now saying that they're obviously accusing the Americans and the Israelis of sabotage and the protesting and all that. And it's pretty obvious that I don't think relations with Iran and America will ever be the same after the protest, because this is like the biggest protest ever since the 2019 and the 2015, I think so, because the government in Iran wants strictness and control, but it's pretty obvious that the social media outlets are basically they're saying that many bots and trolls are going in the comments and trying to westernize most of the people and all that, which mostly causes protests and all that, because this is not the first time Iran has witnessed protests and mass demonstrations. And they understand that, and basically what they're trying to is obviously been violent and all that, but the main reason why Iran is kind of scared by the United States in America, because they've seen what happened to Syria. Because once the United States and NATO start giving weapons to a certain group, or resistance and all that with weapons, that's when there could be a civil war and major repercussions to the Iranian government. And if they don't fix the problem now, it might actually end up collapsing the Iranian regime. But that's kind of unlikely in my opinion. But it really depends, you know. That's just my opinion.
Many, you're based in US? No.
Oh, I'm in the United States, yeah.
Okay. Which state? Only I'm curious about it.
Oh, Virginia.
Virginia. Okay. I went there once, in Richmond, and no, I liked your point. You have to see that. In returning back a little bit of years ago, about 7 years ago, during the last Obama mandate, if you remember, there was a big chance to restart a cooperation with Iran, because there was the nuclear deal that was, let's say, trying to starting with Iran, and all the European countries were agreeing in this deal. It was, I think, during 2015, 2016. And then what changed? It was the election of Trump, and Trump immediately cut off any chance of a deal with Iran. The same with Cuba or whatever. So I think that the deal with foreign countries, especially in the US foreign politics, changed a lot by the foreign politics of the president. I thought that Biden was maybe able to restart some trying, let's say, some deal with Central Asia, but at the moment, as also is not 42 said in advance, I think that the main deal of the US foreign policy is Asia, especially like pivot to Asia, but it's a way to contain China. And for me, it's not completely wise, because China owned a lot of US debt. But in this type of economical war, to, let's say, borrow money to another country, it's like also a sort of control from this country on you. So technically, China has a knife in his hand, but he don't know if it's in the blade part or in the other one. And so check about Anir Barroy. We were talking about India yesterday. I think also the BRICS. It's not a complete clear alliance, because Brazil, it depends who will win the election, if Lula or Bolsonaro. And China and India are not every time agreeing about foreign policy. For example, China and India are in a complete conflict of the control, for example, of Tibet and Bhutan. They have a different vision about the Uyghurs. So it's very complicated, the foreign policy in Asia. It's like China is using more soft power than wars or whatever. So
Yeah, you're very right. I loved your conclusion and all that, and I understand about that. I feel like the sanctions and all that it really does affect a lot because I see that the UN is only choosing which and what because you know what's happening to Saudi Arabia right now. That Saudi Arabia completely disagree, like completely cut gas production by like 1 million or 10 million barrels. Correct me if I'm wrong, and now United States is looking towards human rights abuses and all that, which is kind of funny in a way
But
because
it's not
it's
man, we were talking about it before. It's like the decrease of 2 million barrel for day of production. It's connected to already the reduction of 1 million of consumption for the actual not good economy state. So we are in a technical recession. So the
oh yeah.
people it's using less oil. So they were trying to reduce the production to maintain the prices stable. Because if the demand it's dropping down, because the production is going down, also the prices of oil and gas will go down. So OPEC Plus wants to, let's say, take their own interest and let's say maintain stable the prices, not going down. But if you look to the prices of today, only today the price of Brent and WTI went down 3%. So the effect of the reduction of production, it's already finished.
Oh, all right. I
So
understand.
it's not you're silent. Take the
I talk
stand.
too much. I'm just curious. I wanted to ask you a question. You're leaving. I'm just curious. What is the procedure for the reduction of production of oil production by OPEC, and how often can they do that? Can they like do it immediately again? Cut it another 2 million barrels magically? I don't know.
Okay, the procedure, I don't know, I can check, but technically, if I can say to you, for example, what Rosneft did in Russia, when you have a reduction of demand, they simply switch off the pumping. So technically, it's very simple. I have a friend that is working in Bashneft, in Bashkiria, and is responsible for 5 drillers, and they switched off 3 on 5. So it's very simple to reduce the production. The procedure that you ask about, probably the bureaucracy to reduce, they have to agree all together. Let me check because I don't
No, like
remember
how often can they do that?
how many times they want. It's not a
Right. So if they didn't accomplish the desired result and desired price, now they could just do it again.
okay, but you have to check that, for example, OPEC, it's only 13 states: Algeria, Angola, Saudi Arabia, Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, Emirates states, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Congo, and Venezuela. First, you have to think that in this list, Venezuela, it's completely sanctioned and it's not exporting nothing. So first, but it's one of the biggest exporter in the world technically, because it's like the Saudi Arabia of the South America. The US gave the capacity of Venezuela to export oil, but low quantity, to Italy and Spain to reduce the import of Russian oil. So, but not to US and not to any other states. The problem of Venezuela in this case, you are in the OPEC. They already reduced completely the production, not because of a decision of the OPEC, but because I was in Colombia 6 months ago, so I asked to them and they explained to me. When there was Chavez and then Maduro, the technical, let's say, people inside the national company went abroad because there was complete instability, and so now the control of the drilling, it's military, it's not civil. So they reduced 10 times the quantity of the oil that they are producing, not for the demand, but because they are not able to drill. And nobody want to go to make the work in Venezuela because the inflation is 1000%. It's disaster state. So I think that the big player in the OPEC, in terms of let's say decision, let's check. It's about population. It's Nigeria, Iran, Algeria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, and Angola. All the others are smaller. In terms of crude oil, you have not OPEC. Okay, we have to think that the OPEC production is 41% of the all oil production in the world. So if they're reducing it, they're reducing only that part. Russia is not in, US is not in. You have, let's say, the oil production in the world, 14% it's Russia, 12% Saudi Arabia, 8% it's US, 5% it's China, 5 Iran, 4 Venezuela, 4 Mexico.
When I by the way, just a remark. When I
so
talk
it's
about,
so
about
60%
OPEC,
it's not
mean
OPEC,
including Russia.
Okay, but it's not inside.
Okay. Well,
So
OPEC plus, but yeah, sure.
Yes. So let's say including Russia, it's 55% of the world production. So it's still the majority, but it's not let's say the total amount of the oil producer in the world. But as I repeat to you, like the main problem now it's gas, it's not oil. So and what we are thinking in the European Union to make the next year not a disaster, it's like to introduce not a price cap, but a public subsidies funded by like a bond that will be made with the protection of the European Union. And this money will be used to reduce the cost of the bills for the people and the companies.
Where do they get the money?
It's like a bond, a public bond. So it's like they already did it for COVID. So now the big problem from Russia, for example, it's that Russia cannot access to the international finance to make bond. They cannot make a Russian bond because nobody will buy it. So this is the huge problem. Okay, I have a question, Alberto da Silva. Do you think that African countries can supply enough gas for the European Union? Okay, let me show you a little bit. So this was the previous situation in Europe. So you see that the big infrastructure of Europe before was to Russia. It's about 155 billion cubic meters for a year. It's 140 billion cubic meters by pipe and 15 by LNG. So you see that LNG is not 42, it's for you. LNG for Russia, it's only 10% of the export to Europe. It's nothing. This is like the alternatives of the gas export. So you see the LNG, it's the orange. you see that Russia, the biggest export is pipeline. Then US, Qatar, Norway, Australia, Canada, Algeria, and Nigeria. Actually, what I think that will change, I already said, but I will repeat it. It's that, for example, now the most part of the Italian import it's Algeria and Azerbaijan. So the mix that I think that will be provided to Europe from Southern Europe, it's to Spain. It's from you can see there is pipeline from Algeria and Morocco. Greece is importing the most part of the gas by LNG, and TAP it's the other. This pipeline is already in function. So this is the other pipeline that will be doubled in capacity. It's about 10-15 billion cubic meters. And this is the other pipeline that was finished. If you see on the right part, there is one pipeline that goes to Poland, a small one like with a yellow line. That pipeline was on the same way of the Nord Stream 2. You see the small island? It's the island where Nord Stream 2 was exploded. It's this one. Okay. So what I think it's like that LNG will be not the big supplier source because it's much expensive, but it's it could be a good source for I don't know 15-20% where if there is instability of a supplier you can change it, but it's not for 100% of your gas because it costs 30% more minimum. Alternative for Russia. So fastly, Alberto da Silva, only to conclude your question. Alternative for Russia, let me show you. It's like to export east, but we have only at the moment Power of Siberia 1. And if you check, it's this one that is going to China. And if we can understand the size, Russia was exporting 155 billion cubic meters in 2021 to Europe, and to China 16.5. So it's 10%. And this is the main problem. It's like we can resupply Europe with other sources with an extra cost for sure for the next 1 year. But the biggest problem and trouble is for Russia, because Russia, with a normalization of the gas prices, cannot have enough money for the actual GDP. Because the actual GDP, 40% it's export of oil and gas, and 70% of this GDP of these oil and gases to Europe. So if you cut off completely the export to Europe, it's about minus 28% of the Russian GDP. But it's not a good news for the people, because you have to decrease a lot the services. You will not have this is why for me more the war it's going over, and more it's a problem also for the internal security of Russian Federation. Because it will be longer to make, let's say, peace with your clients. Because also if you will sell to China it's buying 10% of what Europe was buying before. But if you
would they want to buy more? If capacity was there. For,
let's say that if first one pipeline you cannot build in 1 year. So they were talking to the expansion of Power Siberia 2 and the original project it's like to finish the pipeline in 2028. So
And
it's
there is
like
also
to Anirban Roy, switch off the mic.
yeah, I would like to make a point. There's a talk of a pipeline Russia to India, but it also needs to.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Pipeline Russia to India, and it will finish. You said, but you stop.
And it will also take 6 to 8 years.
Okay, so what I'm explaining, this is why it's impossible to you get is not 42. What is the problem? If I want to let's say that now I want to switch my market from west to east, it's okay, but how can will survive the Russian Federation without minus 40% of its actual GDP for 5 years? So it's very so my point of view it could be something that could happen, but if the war will finish as soon as possible, and I'm hoping this especially for the people that is living there, as we listened before from Asadullah Faranzai from Afghanistan, when you are living in a war, it's a disaster. So I'm hoping for the people that is living there, but for the rest of the world, let's say that you are able to maintain one sort of a deal, and Europe will buy, let's say, not all the amount of gas, but part of that amount. Russia can, let's say, have a good deal with the gas export, and also can invest in the infrastructure with Asia. But if it's cut completely, the gas prices will go down next year because we will be in a recession. So without profit, it's very difficult to make any type of investment. We will pay for the pipeline to India or China, only India and China. I don't think so. So and if they will pay, they will want to pay gas and oil very cheap.
Yeah, that's the point here. Look, a lot of people in the West are talking about India is buying Russian oil, India is buying Russian oil. But the fact here is India is a country where oil and gas are heavily subsidized. We buy oil and gas very cheap because the
I
people
know,
here
but
have the
uh,
purchasing power. And here
but
the case is like when West is saying, "Why are you buying? Why are you buying?" And we are saying, "Look, you sanctioned Venezuela, you sanctioned Iran. Where are our market?" And the only reason, because Russia was our supplier, Russia was around 2%, only 2% of our main supply. But now Russia is giving us very cheap oil. That's the only reason we are buying. And
I
it's not,
know, but it's
it,
the only reason. The only reason it's because only China and India can buy it because all the other state cannot. So it's like you have the knife in the right part of the blade because you are saying to Russia, we are the only clients that you can have at the moment. So if you want to sell us, you need to sell us as minimum $35 for barrel discount, or we will not buy it. So
yeah, but it doesn't work in the long term, right? It doesn't help in the long term. When the market stabilizes, India will get oil from Iran because it's much easier.
for sure. So this is why when we were talking about who is giving the short-term benefit in this situation, for sure, China and India are giving a sort of small benefit because are buying oil and gas in discount. But in mid-term, as you said, when the prices will stabilize, for sure you will buy to the better supplier. Maybe Afghanistan, maybe Turkmenistan, maybe because also another thing that people are not talking about is that there is the fifth biggest producer of gas in the world. It's Turkmenistan. Nobody is talking about it. and it's very interesting because there is a lot of deals of a pipeline that is Turkmenistan to China, because they are on the same border, and so Russia, the main problem of Russia is that all the infrastructure of oil export is to west, not to east. So it could be clever to make a fast peace and restart a deal with Europe, but who knows? Okay. Don't you think that Germany and Italy should talking to Russia to save their industries? But, I think that the deal in this situation it's between US and Russia. We have a very short way of diplomacy at this time, and if you remember, a lot of US delegates went to Putin to try to stop the war before February 24, but for sure all these let's say special military operation was planned with a long time of preparation. It was not in the last 3 months. So let's see what will happen. Money is not, if you want to say something, we will stay other 10-15 minutes and then
Uh, uh, I don't know how the war is gonna pride. I think it might end. In my opinion, I just hope it ends like I feel like this winter is. I think a lot of civilians might die because right now, Russia is targeting key infrastructure where they're shutting down electricity and all of that. And when winter is coming, especially when Ukraine and Eastern Ukraine, it gets very very cold in those times. So I don't think I think it should probably end around like maybe next year or something like that. That's what I'm hoping.
okay.
I honestly don't think this war is ending anytime soon. I just don't see an off ramp or any kind of path to a peace agreement. The From the very beginning, I thought about this. This is the kind of conflict you don't want ever happening. Of course, any war is horrible, but in this particular case, it's the situation where you essentially pushed a nuclear power across every possible red line, and until it and because it mobilized now, because at this point Russia has decided to fight back because it at least thinks that it has no other option until some of those red lines are uncrossed. I don't know if that's even a word. I don't think this conflict has any potential to end on one hand. On the other hand, this is not a war between Russia and Ukraine. This is a war between Russia and the United States. As I see it, the only way for this conflict to stop, short of both parties suddenly finding their wits and deciding in a peaceful way resolve this situation magically. The only way this conflict could actually be stopped is if the United States quote loses interest in this conflict and stops supporting Ukraine. And
I don't think that it's a case because like it's but in my opinion it's
the way it can lose interest
Don't
is
forget
if something serious happens in the United States themselves.
The pipeline was destroyed, so they don't have a reason to withdraw any support from Ukraine because I feel like Nord Stream was the only way, only leverage over Europe, and it just got destroyed. So
money, but I think that also Nord Stream can be fixed. It's not a big problem. The big problem, in my opinion, is that now the both part, let's say that US it's behind of Ukraine for sure. But if you can say NATO, let's say that the biggest part of the weapon supplier of Ukraine it's US, British, and Turkey. All the others it's very few stuff. And my point of view is that for Ukrainians see the only way of finish the war with Russia outside of Ukraine. The problem of Putin is that, in my opinion, personal opinion, it's that, however, he need to sell a victory in Russia. Because if the war will finish with a sort of losing, and Putin is technically a president of war. It's not 42, you can agree or not, but Putin became popular with the second war in Chechnya. So before the second war in Chechnya, the popularity of Putin was zero. He won the second war in Chechnya. He made the war in Georgia 2008. But all these wars were against, let's say, army with former Soviet Union weapons. In this case, it will be, let's say, a shame for technically the second biggest army in the world to don't win with Ukraine. That in the chart it's like the 18th or the 20th. So it's how can the president can return back and don't sell to the public a victory. But like the main problem is that a peace deal, in my opinion, I repeat, it's the same that Elon Musk said in Twitter. I think that it was not stupid. Like could be an agreement to recognize Crimea as part of the Russian Federation, and the part of the Donbass that was occupied by LNR and DPR before February 24 as an autonomous part with the surveillance of Russian Federation.
It's too late for that.
yeah, it's pretty obvious. Russia doesn't want to back down anyway.
No. What I'm saying, it could be also technically a completely defeat of one or the other part. So if you can imagine the supply of the US to Ukraine in numbers, the AMRs that are given to the Ukraine, it's about a total amount of less than 25. US are selling to Poland 500, and Poland it's not in war. So also the supply of weapons to Ukraine is given like very small amount, probably to don't piss off too much the Russians.
Unless a part of those 500 goes to Ukraine.
No, it's technically it's also why in your opinion the NATO didn't supply flight jet. If they want to win, they can give F-16 or F-18, but they didn't supply Air Force. They didn't supply ATACMS long-range missiles.
But they did supply older air force from Europe, Romania, Germany.
It was in a ridiculous number. If you gave 10 flight jet of the 80s and Russia have 1,500 of them, it's nothing. On a ground, I had like I saw an interesting interview of CNN presenter that is Indian. I don't remember the name, but I will write to you. And he was telling that also for the Russian export of weapons, for example, Indians are one of the first buyer of Russian weapons in the Russian market, in the weapons market. And if the Russian weapons are not effective on the Ukrainian ground, for Russia, it will be also a big loss because the weapon export, it's a big part of the Russian GDP. So imagine if they cannot prove that their weapons are effective. So it's a big deal for Russia to try to sell a victory, and a long war is not 42. It's not sustainable for the Russian Federation economically. Check
Yeah, I
the.
agree with that.
It's not. It's
I
not.
agree with that.
It's technically Russia. It's already in recession. So the main thing it's the two parts need to agree in a deal that they can sell together to the public. It's an interesting point of view of how it ended the Cuba crisis. The Cuba crisis ended when, like, Kennedy and Khrushchev agreed that Khrushchev was taking back the missile from Cuba. Kennedy was taking back the ballistic missile from Turkey, but Kennedy asked Khrushchev to maintain the agreement secret because he had the election, the presidential election, Kennedy. And if the deals was made public, it was, from the US point of view, one type of weakness. We take out our missile because we were afraid by Soviet Union. So I'm, by my sources, I know that in the last weeks there is a lot of, let's say, talkings between the two parts. They need to understand what is the point for making agreement. And Zelensky and Ukraine, the next day that the Western allied want to make a peace deal, they will do it, because if we stop to supply them in weapons, Ukraine, it's finished the day after. So it's only a question of will to make a peace. This is why I'm hoping so much that the dialogue between the two parts will restart. But also the Russian part have to listen. US part also, like the peace is made by two, not by one.
But why do you think the Turkey peace deal failed? Zelensky was ready for a peace deal in Turkey, right?
When?
That was in February, March, April. Zelensky was ready for a peace deal in April with Russia. The next day, Boris came to Kiev and all that drama.
I don't think that it was ready. I think that it was a way, like, to obtain more, let's say, support from West. And when there was, especially the last offensive in Kherson and in Kharkiv, when there was like a chance to the conventional Ukrainian army, SBU, to see that there was a chance to, let's say, recover a large part of territory. At the moment, you can see that the momentum it's by the conventional forces. I'm not saying that they're winning. I'm saying that at the moment the Russians are not winning on field. They're maintaining the position and losing technically a lot of gain territories. In my point of view, the last 2 days of missile attacks is a military sort of weakness, because if I have to terrorize the cities and to attack the power plants, the civil infrastructure, energy, or whatever, it's because I have to show up internally to my public that we can blow them, but on the field, the Russians are not. Take a map and take in the last 3 months what Russia gained.
Yeah, to be
Nothing.
honest, they have not done anything like ever since the war. You're definitely right on that. Russia right now, Russia is losing. It's pretty obvious right now. And
it's not technically losing, it's not winning. The problem is that Russia probably was prepared on a fast war. The plan A was probably to defenestrate Zelensky immediately, to make a new government that was dividing the southern part, creating such a form of Novorossiya with a connection of Donbass till the Transnistria. So Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Odessa, and to Tiraspol. But also, and the northern bloc in a form of, let's say, puppet Ukrainian government, but disconnected from the sea. So if you cut off Odessa, Ukraine, it's completely, it's a failed state, because without,
basically cut off the Black Sea. Yeah.
if let's say I'm not proposing this type of scenario, but in a scenario where, let's say, the Russian is able to maintain the corridor between the Donbass and Crimea through, let's say, the southern part of Kherson and Zaporizhia, and Ukraine maintain the rest, let's say northern part of Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and Odessa. Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine will be completely reconstructed by Western funds. And with Odessa, they will have also the access to the Black Sea. The only problem is that internally they cannot sell the loss of the corridor of the Azov Sea. So let me check the questions. So last question, and then we close. I wanted to do 1 hour. We did 2 hours also tonight. It's not 42. Are you happy? We will not do 3 hours tonight. So
damn it.
If the US stop aid to Ukraine, Ukraine will be forced to surrender. They can continue on their own. This will be a Putin cancel. Yes, as I said to you, but this will be only when it will be a peace deal, because the US already invested a lot of money. It's not spent, invested a lot of money on war in Ukraine. Is not 42 is right. I think US fears the resources because it gives Russia power and influence. They certainly fear Germany and Real Alliance. Yes. The main problem about the export of the gas to Europe, I can tell to you, it's that unfortunately gas, it's technical, and all the resources, if you check the map, it's in the most part of them owned by not stable or not democratic states. So it's difficult to choose your suppliers. Let's say not to Russia, we will go to Algeria. It's the same. Let's go to Azerbaijan. It's the same type of government. Okay, Stefan, it's rather naive to think that Russia stopped the war tomorrow. The West will return to business as usual with Russia. But will not happen in the next 20 years, regardless of what Russia does. Stefan, okay, so Russia is basically stuck with continuing this war against the US.
The narrative could be changed within a year, depending on the will, basically.
I disagree. I disagree with him because remember this thing: when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was a lot of, let's say, mistrust with the Russian Federation government, especially because Yeltsin had a little bit of, let's say, background of not trustable person. The main thing was, if you check in Europe, you have especially these three states that are the three most important states in the European Union: France, Italy, and Germany. Restarted immediately the relationship between their states and the Russian Federation, because if and it was after like Cold War collapse of Soviet Union, so it was not, it was 50 years of continuous, let's say, state of fear of the others. So I think that for sure it will be difficult to restart the cooperation with the states, but we don't know also what will happen. This government in Russia will continue, the other governments in Europe will continue, who will win the next election, presidential election in the US, midterm. There is a lot of things that can change fastly. But the trains run on electric, so targeting the power plants is military smart. Yes, I can say to you, but that the actually the grid, I had this news this evening. They are, let's say, cutting off technically the grid of the civilians when they have like a power blast in that zones. So they can redirect the electricity that they are able to produce to the military use if they can in Ukraine, actually. So what they are doing immediately, they cut off the export of energy to Europe, and they can make the direction of the power cuts. So if you blast my power plant, maybe one part, I can reduce the supply to one grid, let's say civil. So the people, for example, now have hours where the electricity is cut off, also in Kiev. So this is very problematic for the people, but the Ukrainians are very proud, and I think that it's very difficult to, let's say, to reduce the morale of the people. And for me, it's a disaster because Russian and Ukrainians are like cousins, like brothers, in culturally, in food, drinking,
In everything.
type of because the education was Soviet in both. We can make some differences in some part of Ukraine, but it's the same in Italy. If we say Italy and France, Italy and Spain, we are very similar. So it's impossible to think something that could be a conflict now in
Same thing with India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We are the same people. We eat the same thing. We eat the everything, and we are, the culture is also same, but we are divided in three pieces.
Yeah, but the main difference, I think, that the big boundaries between India and Pakistan, it's the religion, if you can agree with me. And in
The
Ukraine and
religion was
Russia,
a
no,
part.
because we're both Orthodox.
The religion was a tool for the diversion. But the main target was to what's the word? Uh, the main reason was to not give India a chance to become a superpower. Because the resources was in Pakistan, the raw material was in Bangladesh.
Okay. So,
I live in West Bengal. It's beside Bangladesh. The industries are here, but all the raw materials, all we
so,
needed to supply this industry are in Bangladesh. So it just
so and before was what, like Bangladesh was West Pakistan, no? Before the
because
independence.
it was the same area. It was the same
No, no,
area, but
no.
all the raw
I've
materials
got it.
came
Before
from
was
West
Taj,
Bengal.
it was all British Empire. After was divided India and Bangladesh before the independence was part of Pakistan. Was
Yeah, it's not Pakistan,
You
but
guys don't have to
the
leave,
thing
but
was like the raw material was there, the industries was this part, and when the border came up, the economy just broke down. The whole
okay.
economy just broke down.
So no, it was very interesting chatting tonight. I will try to make it monthly if we can. Hoping that we will start to talk about, I don't know, how to make a good borscht or something chapuri or some Indian dishes. I went to but from which city you are in India? Just to curious.
Calcutta.
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 Okay, no, I was there, but I went only in New Delhi and Agra. For me, it was the big experience because I saw this huge difference between the cities and the infrastructure. I was incredibly impressed by the metro in New Delhi. It was something unbelievable. And it was very interesting for me to see also the traffic in India. I was shocked, like
Traffic is bad.
how I survived in an Indian taxi in New Delhi, and I can testify. So perfect. So it's 2 hours now. So thank you for all that you stayed here. Me and B, you are every time in the chat, but you never come to us. So next time you need to connect to the stream, but live, because we wanted to talk with you. Thank you to Anirban Roy and to Isnot42 and also to Manny that unfortunately had a disconnection. We will have other streams very interesting like this. We will have other 4 streams, live streams. One about energy, one about Ukraine, with a former Ukrainian MP that now it's a political analyst. One about Turkey, that would be very, very interesting. And the one by energy, it would be on Tuesday with Paul Sanders, that is an expert about all the energy issues. So if you want to participate and ask question about everything that we talk about, gas, energy, how could be the market in the next years, what could be the scenario, you can answer directly to him. I will put all the updates in the community. So thank you all for your time. Thank you Isnot42 and thank you to Aneri Barroy. So spakane noci e paka. Ciao.
Ciao.
До свидания.